Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be with you today in the first Business and Entrepreneurship International Conference, chairing one of the most important sessions related to sustainable and resilient supply chain. We have in this session three papers focusing on the concept of sustainable and resilient supply chain. I'm Dr. Sarah Gazar, Dean of College of International Transport and Logistics in Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime Transport. My specialization is in supply chain finance. As you know, supply chain characteristics have been changed dramatically over the last few years due to the fourth industrial revolution era and the new business features. So we cannot say anymore that supply chain still has its traditional features in terms of efficiency, mass production, and lean production just in time. We have now new approaches and new applications related to sustainable and resilient supply chain, the responsiveness of the supply chain, and transforming the traditional supply chain to digital supply chain. That's why we will discuss these issues today in our session from different perspectives through the three papers that will be presented in our session, whether from the ecosystem point of view, whether from the industry point of view, or from the technological applications and the different tools employed in the supply chain. We will start directly with the first paper entitled Virtual Supply Chain and Countries' Legal Framework, Literature Review and Institutional Implications, which written by Hussam Omara, Trevina Halim, and Tariq Madkour. The paper will be presented now by Hussam Omara. Hussam Omara is a lecturer in College of International Transport and Logistics in Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime Transport. His research focuses on critical finance and management studies such as global finance, corporate governance, and corporate performance. His doctoral research currently is on the utilization of most recent measurement mechanisms combined in one analysis to measure directions, qualities that are reflected in firm value generation. I'll ask the other presenters to mute their microphones, and after the first presentation directly, we will start the discussion concerning the first presentation and so on. It's my pleasure to receive your questions through the question and answer tab to be shared with Mr. Hussam directly after his presentation. I hope that we should manage the time. Mr. Hussam, the floor is yours. Please start your presentation.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Hussam Omara. I am lecturer at... my voice is clear, sir?
Yes, if you can raise your voice a little bit, it will be highly appreciated.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. My name is Hussam Omara. I am lecturer at College of International Transport and Logistics. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Dr. Ismail Abdul, President of Arab Academy for Science and Technology, and to session's chair, Professor Dr. Sara Al-Bazzar, Dean of College of International Transport and Logistics, and to all conference organizers. Also, I want to share my deep appreciation to my co-author, Tariq Madkour, and Ms. Trevina Ayman for their significant contribution in the work I am going to share with you today. The study that we are going to present now is titled Virtual Supply Chain and Countries' Legal Framework, Literature Review and Institutional Implications. The presentation has 8 main sections as following. We will start with brief introduction, followed by problem and study aims. Then we will move to literature and research methods, and this will take us at the end to the finding and main implications. Before we go through presenting our paper, I'd like to simplify the basic concepts of traditional supply chain as a flow of commodities from vendors to end users. And this basic concept has been developed due to the development of information and the communication technologies, ICT, as Professor Dr. Muhammad Abdul Qadir has shared with us today. So I can consider that our study will complement the findings and the main conclusion he has reached at the end of his very generous presentation. So the competitive advantage in the use of ICT in the supply chain comes from its flexibility in interacting with market demands instead of traditional fixed and inflexible supply chain. And this is what promoted this study to redesign supply chains using information technologies. The move beyond traditional supply chain SC becomes thanks to the IoT. That's forced firms to go global, and that is why the interest in the use of ICTs in the SSCs have gained much attention to be able to achieve advantages over others. And a good example for this is the smooth flow of materials, information, and product. Thus, virtual supply chain increases transparency, inventory control, awareness of customer needs, and a higher level of efficiency. Also, artificial intelligence, it enables trading partners to collaborate efficiently and effectively through the virtual supply chain. Organization can speed up the communication between customers and suppliers, which will reduce logistics costs by using the internet and the digitalization of the supply chain channels to manage supply chain components and the exchange of information between all parties in supply chain, maximizing utilization of the supply chain functionality. Another technology that can complementing the ICT that is directly related to digitalization of supply chain also is Industry 4 technologies. Industry 4 technologies refer to all digitalization technologies aided by the IoT, such as social media, big data analytics, predictive analytics, and 3D printing. To make it clear, the main differentiation between virtual supply chain from the traditional one is the inter-organizational boundaries and constraint between its main players. Also, its flexibility is relatively low, while virtual supply chain tends to have very high manufacturing, delivery, product mix, and volume flexibility, while the lead time is shorter in the case of virtual supply chain, which has a huge implication in the corporate financial and economic performance, translated in value-based management. Thus, there is a little physical availability of the actual product in the case of virtual supply chain. Manufacturers still act as a fundamental foundation of the whole supply chain and also have significant function in the virtual supply chain, so they need to improve their virtual capabilities. Let us move to research problem section. Although the electronic data interchange technology has been around for more than 30 years now, it has not reached small and medium-sized enterprises in developing countries to any significant level. The process of implementation of virtual supply chain technologies can be quite disruptive to the current shape and operational strategies of traditional supply chain, specifically in emerging economies. Additionally, some other factors may hinder the digital transformation, such as legal framework and the country's technological infrastructure. Therefore, our paper main objective to systematically review virtual supply chain literature to identify the finding to date, research gaps, and to provide guidelines for future research in the available models for sustainable business decision. The result from our literature review are reviewed, and we highlighted how broadband technology is affecting virtual supply chain in emerging economies, specifically Egypt. These studies indicate that improved access to broadband technology in developed nations has contributed to increasing supply chain efficiency. And this analysis also provides an overview of the diversity of virtual supply chain domains, as our work does not try to cover all supply chain literature, but only literatures that serve as a specific purpose, the virtual aspect of the supply chain. Further to that, in order to set a time limit as well as the theme to examine, we have reviewed virtual supply chain articles from 2000 up to 2020, and we observed that virtual supply chain was not a concern prior to the year 2000, but a growing body of literature discovered after that has established the presence of virtual supply chain in more recent literature, as in Searing and Miller in 2008. Both physical and virtual domains are discussed about the covered aspect of supply chain by choosing peer-reviewed journals. For example, Journal of Management Information Systems, Journal of Operational Management, European Journal of Operational Research, International Journal of Operations and Production Management, and the other prestigious journals. These journals cover different quality standards as identified by the Association of Business School ABS Journal ranking in 2015, but also include some journals that have a specific focus on sustainability in operational sense, but they are not ranked in ABS 2015. Now, we move to the main finding and themes detected from our review as follows. First, there is a rapidly growing interest in e-businesses and how it impacts the implementation of virtual supply chain, which emphasize the criticality of this area of research and how it still needs further research. Also, we find that there is a need for more research on the constraints of the virtual supply chain implementation in emerging economies, such as Egypt and Oman. We need to emphasize on how technological infrastructures for countries like Egypt enhance the connectivity of regional and the global value chain, RGVCS. When it is used under the right condition, it can reduce trade and the logistics cost, also diversify and increase the competitiveness of these nations. Infrastructure networks to deliver goods and services efficiently and predictably and sustainably. Therefore, we have highlighted how the Egyptian government responded to such challenges by referring to the regulation of the Egyptian telecom industry after the first emerging law of 2011, which has been repealed in March 2017. The legislation is structured to regulate the growth of competition and the implementation of competition in the fixed line market in accordance with the 1997 World Trade Organization framework. Many laws were enacted to liberalize the economy and to make it easier for new businesses to stay in place. Although these laws may seem to be quite liberal, they have had a huge effect in making Egypt more attractive as an investment area. Briefly, the implication of our research is to stress on the competitive advantage for Egypt to be a hub for the virtual supply chain in the MENA region, whereas Egyptian telecommunication infrastructure has developed and the number of fixed line in services increases in response to the government effort to expand services to rural area. We have noticed that traffic growth has increased from 4.4% in the first half of 2019 compared to 15.3% at the end of 2018. Egyptian officials have embraced plans to increase the availability and the adoption of the broadband services. Also, government funds a lot to roll out the next generation network and to develop technology parks and extend broadband availability. Also, our study considered Egypt as one of the continent's lowest cost market for DSL services. Its location is perfect for maintaining European cables, which connect the various parts of the Middle East and Asia. Also, Egypt has a domestic fiber infrastructure that can connect at several points, and this has helped to improve the bandwidth availability for the internet and the virtual supply chain in Egyptian market due to the country's extensive broadband capacity. So in our main conclusion, the COVID-19 outbreak in 2019 has significant impact on supply chain globally. During the coming year, the telecommunication sector is expected to be experiencing a downturn. Spending on telecommunication services and devices is under pressure due to the job losses and the consequent restriction on disposable income. Yet, the overriding importance of telecom services for general communication and the home working will offset these demands. We conclude also in many markets, it will also reduce the increases in subscriber growth to be expected. Also, we have highlighted how the pandemic forced us to shift to rapid digitalization, either to work from home or to educating remotely to maintain social distancing, and to the transformation was easy for developed countries, and developing countries faced some difficulties in that. And among them, the Egyptian government has provided what it could in short period to encourage companies to take steps to incorporate virtual supply chain. Also, we have concluded that it has been suggested that the long-term effect that the crisis can embrace in the Egyptian economy are difficult to predict, but this has been acknowledged in this paper. The paper also has covered the responses from the telecom operators, government agencies, and regulators to the crisis to ensure citizens can continue to make optimum use of telecom services. This can be reflected in subsidies, schemes, and the promotion of telehealth and teleeducation. While network operators may also face difficulties when maintaining and upgrading the existing infrastructure to improve the implementation of virtual supply chain in emerging economies such as Oman and Egypt, some countries may delay or slow down the 5G developments. Thank you for listening, and I welcome all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hussein, for such comprehensive presentation that showed the previous studies done in the area of virtual supply chain and how we need to transform from the traditional supply chain to virtual supply chain. The paper highlighted the importance of ecosystem and how it should be ready to adapt to such changes. Maybe you open with your paper the door to further research, to investigate more how countries should put like roadmap to adapt to the requirements of virtual supply chain, particularly concerning the infrastructure and legal aspects. Since we don't have any questions in the question tab, we can directly move to the second paper in today's session, entitled How We Can Ensure the Supply of More Sustainable Palm Oil, written by Misa Gabor, Matiskins, and Matibs Oprit. It will be presented by Dr. Matibs Oprit. who studied economics and business, particularly the environmental management, energy economics, sustainable development, renewable energy, and environmental protection at University of Maribor. In addition to his academic contribution, he has also practical contribution as independent consultant for increasing energy efficiency and increasing renewable energy sources in households, with a special emphasis on heat pump and HVAC integration. Just to remind our presenters to manage time, and presentation should be presented in 20 minutes. Also, our audience, don't forget to post your questions on the question tab. However, Dr. Matibs is not available yet, so we can move directly to the third paper. Then we can return back to his paper. Our third paper in today's session, entitled Challenges and Opportunities of Blockchain Technology in Food Supply Chain in Egypt, prepared by Habiba Ruby and Ahmed Ismail, and the paper will be presented by Habiba Ruby. Habiba is a graduate teaching assistant in College of International Transport and Logistics in Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime Transport. She studies a master's degree at the Arab Institute for Trade and Commodity Exchange in Supply Chain Management Program. Her research focuses on sustainable supply chain and smart technologies in supply chain management. Habiba, the floor is yours, and our attendees, don't forget to post your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Hello, everyone. Today, our topic will be under the title Challenges and Opportunities of Applying Blockchain Technology in Food Supply Chain in Egypt. This will be our outline. And we start with an introduction. In 2019, the World Health Organization estimated that about 600 million persons, which about 1 in 10 people in the world, fall ill after eating contaminated food, and about 420,000 persons die every year. Globally, food scandals have increased in previous 3 years. We have, for example, in Europe, many food scandals related to providing customers with horse meat instead of beef. Locally, the Egyptian authorities have recently resized 3 stores selling donkey meat instead of beef in one area, and there is a jail. A pastry maker has been jailed for providing customers with a stuffed bakery with donkey meat instead of beef also. Supply chain visibility become an essential tool for guaranteeing food quality and safety. So we can tell that tracking food supply chain mainly has become an essential tool in these days. In response to polluted food scandals in Egypt, this research aims to investigate the challenges and opportunities of adopting blockchain technologies in Egypt's food supply chain. The term blockchain can be defined as a chain of records or information which is stored in a form of blocks and which are controlled by no single authority. And once an information is stored on a blockchain, it's extremely difficult to change it or delete it. Blockchain was first used in the financial sector to facilitate financial transactions, and in recent years it's being used in managing supply chains. And from here we can say that the link between blockchain and food supply chain has been emerged. Food supply chain management refers to the process of managing and controlling the activities related to food while taking into consideration the standards of quality and food safety. In 2017, IBM and Walmart cooperated to establish 2 blockchains, one for the imported mangoes from Americas and one for the pork imported from China. This is the mechanism how the blockchain has been worked on a pig supply chain. Each pig has been tagged with a barcode. This barcode saves all the information related to the pig from the farm, the slaughter date, the transportation process, the feeding system. And then all this information stored in a blockchain, all the supply chain partners can see this information, and the customer also can check this information by scanning the QR code provided on the package when they are going to buy the pork from Walmart. Walmart mentioned that the process of tracking the pig usually takes before adopting blockchain about 7 days, and after adopting the blockchain on the supply chain of the pork meat, it took usually about 2.2 seconds, which extremely huge difference. The qualitative approach was followed in this study through conducting interviews with experts in the food supply chain sectors and aiming to conduct a SWOT analysis, which is one of the most important tools for strategic analysis, and is considered the first stage of preparing and designing plans within enterprises. The sampling type used is non-probability sampling or purposive sampling, and selecting the respondents was based on their expertise in the academic field also. They have a good knowledge about blockchain technology, and the other respondents were selected because they are Egyptian retailers who provide the customer with meat. And from the interviews, we come with this SWOT analysis, which can be divided into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For the strengths, we have cost optimization, counterfeiting reduction, traceability increased, and trust increased also. And opportunities, supply chain process optimization, which related to also cost optimization, enhanced customer purchasing experience, increased product safety and quality. Lack of awareness about the technology is one of the weaknesses. The complexity of the process, data sharing between partners was one of the weaknesses. Threats related to require high investment to be implemented, require high collaboration between supply chain members or partners, and impacts are uncertainty. Most of the respondents agreed that the blockchain technology would enhance the supply chain process optimization through the transparency and the visibility of products move. Therefore, supply chain process optimization would lead to a reduction in the cost of meat supply chain process. This is through the intermediaries needed to provide the tracking process or the information related to the tracking process. Although some of the respondents mentioned that applying blockchain would improve customer shopping experience, as the customer will be able to know all the information related to the product they are willing to buy by only scanning the QR code provided on the package. However, lack of awareness about the technology between food supply chain entities in the Egyptian market, and data sharing would be obstacles of applying such a technology in Egypt. And finally, since the blockchain technology is not applied in the Egyptian markets yet, the respondents were not sure about the exactly impacts of applying this technology, whether it's going to be positive or negative impacts on the consumers and the markets also. This paper tries to provide a holistic picture of the possibility of applying blockchain technology in the Egyptian meat sector. This was through conducting interviews with experts in the food sector. Some respondents were optimistic about the idea of applying this technology in the Egyptian meat sector. However, they mentioned some obstacles that may hinder the application of this technology in the Egyptian markets. For further research, another researcher could try adopting smart technologies in either food sectors like dairy products or in different sectors such as medicine or agriculture sectors by using different tools, as traceability and transparency in the coming years will be mandatory and not a choice for supply chain members. Thank you for listening, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Habiba, for such interesting presentation. Actually, soon or later, blockchain technology and the other technologies will be adapted in different supply chains, particularly these supply chains that deal with sensitive products in terms of temperature or handling and so on. So it's very important to start from now studying the context of each supply chain and its level of readiness to adapt to such technologies This presentation and this research focused on the SWOT analysis of the Egyptian supply chain in order to check in food supply chain, particularly in order to check its availability and level of readiness to such new technology. And as you said, you opened the door to further research to adapt the same methodology, whether in other countries to investigate their level of readiness as well, or to start working on the challenges highlighted in this paper to start implementing the blockchain in food supply chain in Egypt or any other supply chain in Egypt. Meanwhile, blockchain technology will be one of the most important tools that will shape the new era of technological supply chain or virtual supply chain, as mentioned by Mr. Hussam. I don't have any comments or questions from attendees. However, as we said, the floor is open to any questions or discussion. Thank you, Habiba, again, and looking forward to your next projects. Time now is to return back to the second paper, how can we ensure the supply of more sustainable palm oil? So Dr. Matitz, are you here? Okay, so what I do recommend for attendees who are interested in such paper is to check the uploaded PowerPoint recorded video that will be shared by email from our scientific committee to all interested participants. Any more questions related to the session topic, the sustainability and the resilience of supply chain, whether from the panelists or from the attendees? Great. Okay, it was my pleasure to be with you today. And next year, when we will come again to such conference, it will be our pleasure to see your further research that should be in the same area. We tried in this session to highlight the importance of sustainable and the resilience supply chain with all its perspectives, whether the ecosystem, the industrial implications, or the technological tools. Thank you for your attention and see you in the next session, inshallah.
How are you, sir? Okay. Hello? Doctor, can you hear me? No, I cannot hear you.
Okay, now
Okay.
can you?
Yeah, doctor. Yes.
Yes, it was muted.
All right. So today, this session B2, it's going to start now. It's about the development, sustainability development goals and SME and people management. Okay. We'll have 3 sessions in it, doctor, with the rest of the team. And this session will be 20 minutes. 15 minutes are presentation, for proper presentation, and of course, 5 minutes for the question and answer. Okay, so please go ahead, doctor. Any questions, of course, the attendees are going to send them to me, and then I'll convey them to you.
Yes, sir. Shall I share my screen, sir?
Yes, please go ahead, please.
May I start now, Dr. Adil?
Yes, give me a second just to introduce you. Okay, doctor. Dr. Venkat Thumiki has more than 20 years of experience in academics, research, and corporate training. His research areas include consumer behavior, crisis management, entrepreneurship, and tourism marketing. He has been conducting institutional research in the area of student dropout, student attainment of graduate attributes, and effectiveness of internship processes. He has been designing training programs in area of strategic management, marketing, research skills, communication, leadership, and change management. His experience in quality assurance related areas include curriculums design, devising, and implementing modern methodology, such as case-based and problem-based teaching, classroom evaluation using. So, Dr. Venkat also will discuss today about the knowledge transfer from retiring employees in public sector in Oman, the challenging an issue. The co-worker of this paper is Prof. Hisham Majid. Please, doctor, go ahead. You may start.
Respected Chair, my co-presenter, and dear audience, good afternoon. I am Dr. Venkat Ramraj Thumiki. My co-author, Dr. Hisham Majid. We both represent Modern College of Business and Science, Muscat, Sultanate of Oman. Today, I would like to present our research paper titled Knowledge Transfer from Retiring Employees in Public Sector in Oman, Challenges and Issues. My presentation will flow in this manner. I will start with the introduction, throw some light on the literature, objectives of the study and methodology will be detailed, and I will present the findings, conclusions, and make a couple of recommendations. And at the end, I will wind up my presentation with practical theoretical implications along with references. There are 39 organizations in public sector of Oman, including various ministries, Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, authorities, Public Authority of Water Works. So there are many authorities, institutions, ministries, government-owned companies such as Oman Oil. All these institutions put together employed by the end of 2020 around 230,000 workers. So that's quite a big number. Now recently, government of Oman has taken a decision that people who have attained, employees who have attained more than 30 years of service, they would be, they will be retiring. And as per the decision, in 2020 alone, nearly 5,000 employees retired. Then what happens when these employees retire? They possess invaluable skill and knowledge related to job, and this job related skill and knowledge, they are developed not only by handling various tasks, difficult tasks throughout their tenure, but also through formal training. These employees are trained locally and internationally, some of them. So when these people, they retire and they go out, they take away knowledge with them. Patton, 2008, conducted research on retiring engineers and found out that valuable knowledge is lost when these engineers retire. So the literature very clear, it's also a known fact that when employees retire, they take away the knowledge along with them. Now with this premise, we started looking at the available literature. Knowledge transfer process has to happen. Anyways, it has to happen, knowledge transfer process. So it starts with identifying the knowledge from these retiring workers or employees, storing that and transferring. This appears to be a very common process, which can also be applied to the retiring employees. Then the literature says clearly that the transfer itself is a challenge. Then when we looked at some of the techniques that are available, for example, Maestro 2020 has very clearly explained, extensive literature review they did, and they found out that mentoring would be probably most appropriate and is widely used as a downward technique. Means a senior manager will be guiding a very junior or recently joined employee in case of induction or new hires. In case of job shadowing technique is also, job shadowing technique is used in case of replacement and succession planning. There are several techniques such as guidance, workshops, hands-on training, and storytelling, and community of practice. Diane et al., they have reviewed the literature and they conducted around 200 interviews across the world. And they found out that there is no one technique which is suitable. Different techniques have to be used in case of knowledge transfer. Okay, then we looked at the factors that influence. Obviously, there are personal factors, which is the baby boomers. Now, we know that baby boomers are those who are born between 1946 to 64. So if somebody, let me say somebody is born in 55, by 2020, he has attained 75, so he retired. Even those who are born in 60, 61, 62, they are retiring now. And these retiring employees, they will be guiding Generation X and Generation Y, which are in Generation X must be roughly between late 30s to late 50s. And Generation Y will be between early 30s or late 20s. So when the knowledge transfer happens between generations, that is a big issue. It's because their learning methodologies are different. Then individual characteristics, for example, how much they believe in themselves, efficacy, attitude. In fact, for this whole research work, this is the basic idea. Antunes et al., Antunes and Pinheiro, they have reviewed literature, 2,511 articles ranging from year 1960 to 2017. So many articles they reviewed, and they found out so many things. But one of the important aspects they said is that individual characteristics are very important. So based on this, our idea is actually formulated. The problem has been formulated, and there are several organizational factors. For example, service sector mostly uses case-based method. So like this, these are the factors. For example, tacit knowledge, it's difficult to translate, whereas explicit knowledge much easier. So these are the various factors. Based on this, the objectives were set. For example, the objectives were basically the first objective is to evaluate the attitude of retiring employees. The whole study is conducted from the perspective of retiring employees. And the second one is even the challenges were identified in implementation from the perspective of retiring employees. Then that means our population and our sampling unit is retiring employees, comprised of retiring employees. We adopted a snowball sampling because we do not know actually who was retiring. So we know a couple of the retiring employees. We forwarded the link to them. In turn, they forwarded the link to those who are retiring and those who know in their circuit. So snowball sampling was used, and sample size of 76 appeared to be reasonable for any quantitative analysis. Descriptive statistics and chi-square tests were used. Chi-square test was used to evaluate the association between the demographic characteristics and their attitude. And to support the quantitative analysis, Kramer's V and Bonferroni correction were also done to find out the strength between the Kramer's V was conducted to find out the strength between the variables, and Bonferroni correction was done to avoid type 1 error. And then Cronbach's alpha was very attractive, 0.824, indicated that the instrument that we have used is valid. And in the instrument, we asked a couple of questions. For example, what are the challenges that you foresee? So certain issues the respondents anticipated. That's why the questionnaire also contained predictive validity. So very quickly, I will present you the findings. There were 76% were males and 23% were females. We tried to benchmark our sample characteristics with the population characteristics. In the public sector in Oman, 64% are male and 36 are female. So more or less, I think I should say our sample meets with the characteristics of the population. Organization size was decided based on the RIADA, not exactly the RIADA's classification, but we have taken it as a basis. Now, these are the findings, which very clearly presents the attitude of retiring employees towards transferring their knowledge. So they were presented statements wherein they should indicate from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So these are arranged in a descending order. You can see, dear sir. For example, they said that they acquired skills. Santoro conducted research in Italy, Santoro et al., and they said that people acquire skills. So it's not just known to everybody, but there is also evidence to say that people acquire skills. And even in my research, my sample also said the same thing. And these retiring employees in Oman, public sector in Oman, they are willing actually to transfer their knowledge. So that's something very interesting. They are willing, and they know in which areas they have. The awareness is also very high. They know in which areas their knowledge can benefit or can be useful, and also they indicated that it will benefit the organization. That's something very interesting. Hisig et al. Conducted research with 222 industry experts and academia, both industry and academia. They interviewed, and they found out that knowledge transfer from retiring employees will benefit the organization enormously. It will benefit the organization. That's something amazing. And if we look at the benefit to the individuals, for example, that is also very interesting. For example, you can see that the individuals also get benefited. But if we see the lowest rated items, for example, the retiring employees were not prepared to transfer their knowledge. They were not ready. That means they need some training, some push, some support. What benefits do they perceive from their knowledge transfer? I would the third item under existing employees, benefits to the existing employees. Kindly look at the third item, sir. Shabat et al. They conducted research in Jordan, and they concluded that knowledge transfer will benefit the society at large. Really, it benefits the society at large. Even in my research, in our research, the retiring employees said that the knowledge that they give will benefit the employees who are serving in the form of strengthening their CV. That means they can move to the better jobs. It's good. It will be a win-win situation for the society, for everybody. So in that way, the retiring employees perceived great benefits from the knowledge that they transfer. Then we also asked them whether they have any preference of knowledge transfer techniques, and they gave the preferences. Obviously, highest rated one is the virtual workshops. But if we see the Mazorods and Buckley, in 2020, they did research, extensive research, and they found various various techniques that can be used in knowledge transfer and as the preference of the people, particularly the retiring people and the transferers. And they said that community of practice means knowledge sharing sessions and workshops, hands-on training. So these are the community of practice was widely used. We indicated here best practices meeting. And then in the mentoring and coaching was highest rated, in fact, in their research. So in our research also, yes, sir.
Doctor, you want also to conclude your presentation because of time? Yeah.
Sure, sir. Thank you. So this is the conclusion. In fact, another 1 minute. Finally, we would like to conclude that large number of employees are retiring and then knowledge loss happens. It is not good to leave the knowledge go along with them. So it's better to capture that knowledge and transfer that knowledge. Virtual workshops and mentoring will use. We have come up with this methodology where the systematic way knowledge can be transferred. So initially identify the knowledge components, then design the transfer process and knowledge is transferred. If you see the journey, the employee is exiting with the knowledge retained by the organization. So the practical implications are currently number of employees are retiring month by month basis, senior number of employees are retiring in Oman. So this is need of the hour, and the REKTS that we have presented, the REKTS we have presented will contribute to the theory. So thank you so much. These are my references, and thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, kindly go ahead. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, we have a few minutes for questions, 4 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. It seems your presentation was clear, Doctor.
Yes, there's a question in the chat, sir.
Yes.
There's a question. The question is from our friend Dimitris. Applications in other parts of the world. Yes, I think
Yes.
that is that. Yes, sir. I would like to explain this, Chair, with your permission.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, dear co-panelists, yes, this is widely applicable, as we all know that not only in public sector but in private sector also employees retire. So when these employees retire, these employees have accumulated enormous amount of work-related knowledge and skill, not only through handling tasks but also training. Companies spend millions of dollars on training employees. So when these employees leave, their knowledge should be captured. First thing is hold the employees, let the employees not leave. But when it comes to retirement, which is an imperative and inevitable function, then the knowledge has to be transferred, not only across the world, but I think across all sectors, public and private.
So as you said, Doctor, my question is also, what could be done to, if there's a systematic approach of retirement, it could be a solution of this, right?
Yes.
That's my opinion. Yes.
Yes, true.
Yes.
That's true. That's why what we talk about is, we talk about the exit journey. So that period can be decided by different organizations. For example, let us take 2 years. So the last 2 years, while the employee delivers his duties, those 2 years should be allocated for transferring the knowledge. And this knowledge transfer should be embedded in the daily routine of the retiring employee. But
And
by
also,
not
go ahead, Doctor.
pressurizing them, yeah.
It's supposed to be a strategy, not, yeah. If it could be
Exactly.
longer, who will be successors? This is my opinion.
Yeah.
Who will be successors to take over the responsibility? And then it's supposed to be a systematic plan continuously, to maintain sustainability of human resources in every area.
Yes, sir. In theory, Dr. Adil, there is a concept called job shadowing. This job shadowing is a very good technique that can be used in case of transferring knowledge to successors.
Right, Doctor. Thank you very much. The next presenter, we really appreciate it. Very excellent discussion, Doctor, and add of knowledge. The next presenter will be Fatima Camila. So we'll switch to Fatima. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to take opportunity to welcome you, Fatima, and also introduce Fatima to the, to the presenter. Fatima is a student of tourism. She's a last year. She has performed a lot of internship in different organizations in Oman, mainly in aviation and tourism. Her research is about the effect of transportation or the role of transportation in the growth of tourism in Oman. And so this is the discussion she's going to give us today. So please, Fatima, could you proceed with your presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Adil Hindi. Your Excellencies, our distinguished guests, members of the BEIC community, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good afternoon to you all. I'm Fatima Kamila, a BSc Tourism and Hospitality Management graduate from Oman Tourism College. It is my privilege to welcome you all for this conference, and today I will be presenting on the factors that influence tourist choice to select various transportation modes in Oman. Let us take an overview of the contents. Firstly, we will be talking about the background of this research topic and the introduction, where purpose, objectives, research question, and limitations of the study will be discussed. Later on, it will be followed by the literature review, which was covered with the framework of the study and the objectives. Thirdly, the methodology, followed by findings, and the thorough discussion of the objectives of the study. Lastly, there will be the conclusion and the reference. Talking about the background, tourism is an industry that involves individuals to travel to a new destination for various purposes. To generate tourism, there must be a movement. A person can travel through any mode of transportation. Therefore, it is possible to assess a destination. Secondly, tourism is an imperative component in the tourism sector. The development of the transport sector has resulted in a large expansion of tourism. Thus, the improvement of the tourism sector in the destination totally relies on the improvement of the transportation system. Thirdly, the transport services available for the use of tourists has an impact on the full tour experience. It is important to recognize and discuss different dimensions that impact satisfaction in transportation for improving the service for tourists. Talking about the introduction, the improved networks of transportation infrastructure have benefited Oman as a tourist destination. Moreover, it has made substantial changes in travelers' concerns on distance and time. Hence, it promotes the destination itself and provides the ability for tourists to travel. The purpose. This study aims to assess the existing modes of transportation available for tourists to reach various destinations in Oman and identify the factors that influence tourist choice to select various modes. Secondly, the objectives. The first objective is to identify factors that influence tourist choice to select various transportation modes in Oman. And the second objective was to measure tourist satisfaction with various transportation modes in Oman. Thirdly, the research question was centered with the theoretical framework of this research. And the research question was, what are the factors that influence a tourist decision on the choice of transport mode and tourists satisfied with the transport modes and services Oman has to offer? Talking about the limitations, while the researcher plans and decides and conducted the study methodically, there were some limitations faced by the researcher that must be addressed. Firstly, The analysis of the study was centered by the data submitted by the respective respondents through the online survey. Therefore, the explanation of the finding was restricted. The research was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic, hence the gathering of detail and interpreting from interviews and focus groups would have provided more adequate insights for the analysis. Secondly, the field research did not consider a number of social and human factors, such as contradictory conduct and emotional experiences. The use of self-complete based survey, like questionnaires, are convenient and accessible. However, the respondents tend to misunderstand certain questions and provide inaccurate data. Therefore, it is a strong con that affected the findings of the study. Talking about the literature review, transportation in the context of developing tourism. So there are some literature points that have brought to your attention on the transportation in the context of developing tourism. Rita et al. 2014 highlighted that a well-developed infrastructure is a significant factor in upkeeping economic activities, and it's also essential for regional development. And according to Al-Khadid 2015, transport is considered as a highly significant factor that contributes to the regional development of tourism. Rita et al. 2014 highlights that a well-developed infrastructure of transportation is a significant factor in upkeeping the economic activities, and it is also essential for regional development. Fourthly, Kalharas and Dual 2011, in a broader tourism structure, the relationship between tourism and transport remains as the most important. The transportation system in a destination is responsible for providing comfortable, safe, fast, and a price-competitive transportation service. Vikar and Malaya 2018. Lastly, Borodako and Rudiniki 2012 confirms that the accessibility of transport, technological adaptation, and development related to contemporary transport are significant features needed for a destination to become a competitive tourism market leader. Now I'm going to talk about the factors that influence the choice of transportation in a destination. Firstly, the speed of transport. In 2019 argues that the vehicle speed is a very important concern for the tourist, although contemporary transport facilities comes with comfort and speed. Secondly, the regularity of service. Bajada and Trijadi 2017 reveals that poor regularity reflects the unreliability of transport service, although high regularity and frequencies of transport permit travelers with travel flexibility. Thirdly, the quality of service. In order to maintain the quality of service for tourists in a transport area such as space, cleanliness, seat availability, and staff service needs further attention. Now I'm going to talk about the other factors that influence safety. According to Dilip 2019, undoubtedly one of the major concerns for tourists is safety and security while they travel, as tourists prefer more secure mode of transportation. Cost of service. Sudha et al. 2014 found out that the price has a significant influence on the choice of transportation mode. Number 4, Dilip 2019 describes that the comfort found in a transportation service is an additional factor that influences the choice of the mode of transportation. Lastly, accessibility. Al-Khadid 2015 says it is important to consider several transportation modes when it comes to the development of tourism sector. Amongst them, the factor of accessibility, which is embodied with a sound road of network with access to tourist sites in a destination. So now I'm going to talk about the transportation facilities which are available and identified in Oman. Firstly, the buses and coaches, then the taxis, the rental cars, ferry service, and the airplane service. Talking about the methodology. Secondary sources like transportation and tourism books, journal articles, government and transportation entity publications, documentaries were vastly used by the researcher in this study in order to build a strong theoretical composition. of the study, especially in the literature review. Secondly, in order to meet the objectives of the study population, the online survey was restrained to tourists who has visited Oman previously. The sample size was a total of 100 respondents, and the questionnaire was distributed to diverse nationalities for the purpose of gathering diverse, relevant, and dependable data from the population. The researcher chose purposive sampling method to center the right participants for the study. Fourthly, the findings. The findings of this research is based on a statistical analysis of 100 surveys, as I mentioned earlier, and the survey was developed by referring to the objectives of the study and previous and tourist transportation related studies conducted on international and tourism destinations. So the survey was divided into 4 sections, and section 1 was casing on the demographic factors, section 2 was on travel information, and section 3 was on the factors that influence the tourist choice to select various transportation modes in Oman. So talking about the respondents' profile, 46% of the respondents were from the age group 18 to 29, were from the age group 40 and 49. This survey research was mostly participated by female respondents, which was by 64%, and meanwhile, 76 of the respondents have previously visited Oman. Now I'm going to talk about the findings in the discussion part. Firstly, about the findings. So now I'm going to talk about the clustered column, which represents here, and which is made on the mode of transportation the respondents use to select, they selected to visit each of these attractions and governorates in Oman. So giving you a summary of this clustered column, rental cars and private cars are the most used form of transportation. Secondly, the public transportation was the main use in the capital and to other major cities. Thirdly, the ferry service was the least used transportation mode, and followed by the taxi service, which was moderately used at outskirts of Muscat, and it was mainly highly used at the main governorates. Now I'm going to talk about the table here displays the respondents' level of relevance to 12 factors that influence the respondent or the tourist to choose different transportation modes in Oman. Safety was encountered as a totally relevant factor by 55% of the respondents. 48% of the respondents mentioned the accessibility to the transportation mode as a very relevant factor, followed by 26% of the tourists who chose foreign language and location as somewhat relevant factor, and 6% of the tourists who chose local experience is not at all a relevant factor when it comes to choosing a different mode of transportation in Oman. The findings indicated that a high level of relevance on the factor safety with a mean score of 4.23 and a mode of 5. As discussed and identified earlier in the literature review, there are several dimensions of the tourist transportation services. As a part of the dimensions identified, the researcher included 8 more dimensions in the study as follows: reliability of service, distance, number of passengers, local experience recommended by someone, foreign language and location, sustainability, accessibility to the transportation mode.
Fatima, yes. You have 3 minutes, okay, to conclude your study.
Okay,
please.
So this is a pyramid that was that rates from the studies. So this pyramid displays the dimensions ranking from the most relevant to the least relevant found out in this study. And so I'm going to rush into conclusion as we are running out of the time. So majority of the respondents were extremely satisfied with traveling by plane and ferry service provided in Oman. And the study further confirms that the European Environmental Agency in 2020 that 61% of the tourist transport is done by car. So where private cars in Oman were found out that 26.2% and 43% of the respondents used rental car as their frequent mode of transportation around Oman. And attributes like service frequency, comfort while waiting were standard at the low scale of satisfaction. And the research further highlighted that the identical transport modes of service may have a different level of comfort and experience provided by various operators. This factor also may vary for the price the traveler pays. And lastly, as discussed in the literature, the price has a significant influence on tourist choice of the transportation mode. And as a result of the study, the price also ranked third in the pyramid. So taking Oman as a case study, this research studied which attributes of Oman transport services are mainly considered by tourists, as we identified earlier. And lastly, the research also identified there's a gap between the necessary need of transportation infrastructure with the built infrastructure. So the quantitative survey and research approach has supported the researcher to draw conclusions and concept with the tourist transport satisfaction. So the findings of the study can significantly contribute to stakeholders to identify their shortcomings and transform the current transportation infrastructure, a potential dimension, and to encourage more tourists to visit Oman. As I have come to my end of the presentation, I would like to thank you all for being a part of my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed and gained some insights of my study area. And I'm very glad to be a part of this conference. Thank you, Dr. Adil.
Thank you very much, Fatima. It was very fruitful discussion and the paper. Now we'll open for the questions. We have a feedback from Dr. Pinkin. This is his excellent presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let me see, because as you mentioned, that cost of services effect on has significant influence in the transportation service. In your opinion, what suggestion would you suggest to in Oman to minimize the cost of services, specifically with the context of pandemic, the cost of services such as PCR test, quantitative fields, and others? That's a question.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. So this does not only cover the transportation factor, but also the costs that include with traveling post-pandemic, right? So a suggestion that I would like to give is for the inbound tourists who are visiting Oman is sort of a financial aid, like a mini loan for them to, once they travel Oman, and for them to, they're funding the costs for to come to Oman, and then that they can repay their their money in time slots, like in 3 months or in 4 months, as if of a small financial aid. So that can in countries like Rio, destinations like Rio, they're already implementing that, and they've also started circulating advertisements and posts on social media, attracting tourists to come and visit because they're cost effective and they provide financial aid. Yeah.
Okay. Another question for you, Fatima, from Faiza Amir. She says that any suggestion to increase safety and security for transportation, ways and means?
Thank you very much, Faiza, for this excellent question. And safety is one of the important attributes in Oman. Oman is also known as one of the safest countries in Oman to travel. But in the transportation context, Safety here really means is that the tourists are unaware of a foreign land and the language and so on. So to increase safety and security for the transportation, I would like to suggest to use bilingual and trilingual public transportation notices and signs, and tourism brochures, and more what do you call, more like sort of like.
Okay, Fatma, that's fine. Good explanation. Thank you very much. It was excellent presentation and paper.
Thank you.
There's no doubt it added value. So we'd like to move to the next presenter. Okay, the next presenter is Onyeka J. Chukwuka. My apologies if my pronunciation is not right. Onyeka J. Chukwuka. He is a student, a research student in United Kingdom, but specifically in Liverpool John Moore University. So his concentration, the basic job at this stage is as a researcher, and he's the main author of this paper that he presented. The two co-authors, Dr. June Rain and Dr. Dimitrios Paraskevadakis. Those are the authors of this paper. So now we'll give you the opportunity, please, to Mr. Chukwuka to go ahead with the presentation.
Hi, sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. I think someone else is sharing their screen.
I think Miss Fatma should unshare her screen, sir.
Fatima? Fatima, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you unshare your screen, please?
Right, just a second.
By the thank you very much. The title of the research will be presented is a preliminary research on purchasing relief supply in disasters response. Okay, so please, sir, can you proceed? You can share screen now, sir. I think your microphone is off.
Sorry, 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Hi everyone. Sorry, is my screen shared now?
Yes.
The PowerPoint is showing.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Onyeka John Chukwuka. I am a PhD research student at Liverpool John Moore University. Firstly, before I start, I would like to say it's a great opportunity for me to be here to share a section of my research in this conference. I'd like to thank everyone who's here, who is participating, who is going to listen to my research. This research that I'm doing has been done by myself and my co-authors, Dr. June Rain, who is my principal supervisor, and Dr. Dimitrios Paraskevadakis, who is my co-supervisor. The title of the research I'll be presenting today is a preliminary research on purchasing relief supplies in disaster response. It's a section of my PhD, which is titled Risk Analysis of Emergency Supply Chains, with particular focus on intermodal transport. To start this presentation, The contents will be, I will start with the background information, which will be like an introduction, some questions which the research hopefully answers, the methodology, the result, and finally I will conclude with some findings and some recommendations. The aim of the study would be to present an up-to-date survey of the literature on purchasing relief supplies, and also to provide a better understanding of the relevance of procurement or purchasing relief supplies in disaster relief. Now, for us to start, I would like to give you a background knowledge of the study. Sorry. So, to start, I would like to say the world today is experiencing disasters from all aspects all around the globe. We experience disasters. At the moment, we're also experiencing the COVID-19. Disasters are events that actually originate either by nature or man-made. These disasters, when they come in, they tend to disrupt the normal activities, the normal functioning of society, and it tends to displace people, make people vulnerable. And following the occurrence of these disasters, the world comes together, try as much as possible to carry out a disaster relief operation where different stakeholders, governments, non-governmental organizations, the military, they all come together as try as much as possible to protect life, to save life, and to protect the infrastructure they can. The basis of the disaster relief operation is actually to help those. The main primary objective is to save those who have been affected by these disasters, and the only way we can save them and protect them is to provide them with the essentials that they've been cut off from by these disasters. There are different kinds of disasters: earthquake, hurricane, tsunamis, fires, conflicts, So procuring or purchasing relief supplies is very important because in any disaster relief operation, it accounts for about 65% of all the money spent. And it is not, purchasing relief supplies is not as easy as it sounds because disasters are unpredictable, they're uncertain, and it makes purchasing relief supplies very challenging. So of late, regardless of the importance of purchasing relief supplies in disaster relief operations, it hasn't actually attracted so much interest from researchers, the industry. So of late, it has started gathering interest and more information is coming into relief supplies because of its relevance in disaster relief operations. And that's the reason why we're doing this work. We're doing this project so as to gather as much literature as has been done and also to help us understand ways in which we can solve these problems. So the research questions I'm hoping this research will be able to answer would be to actually come out and tell us and define the current status of this research so far, and also give us some insight about the methodological approaches that have been applied in this research field. Moving on, the methodology in which we used to carry out this research. This research has actually been done using the systematic literature review. The reason why we use the systematic literature review is because it actually uses standard measures to actually conduct its own research. It's quick, it helps us to reduce the bias in any research, and it gives us a broad understanding of what has already been done in the field and also tell us what has not yet been done. So for our research methodology, we actually followed this guideline, which is the guidelines of Shoring et al. That was done in 2005, which says we have to collect materials first, describe these materials, group them into different teams, and then finally evaluate and analyze these materials. To conduct our search, which is the first bit of the guideline, which is material collection, we actually used two research databases, which is the Web of Science and Scopus. We use these databases because they have compiled data in abstracts, conference proceedings, and reports. We used relevant keywords, which we've actually extracted from already existing research in the field to actually conduct this search. The relevant keywords we use are emergency, humanitarian, disaster, relief, procure, purchase, buy, sourcing. We actually connected these keywords with the Boolean operators and or, and we actually analyzed or searched for papers between the time range of 2008 to 2021. Our main focus and our criteria we used to select these articles were articles that we actually peer-reviewed, refereed articles, just to reduce bias and get concrete information. After our first search, we gathered a total of 353 papers in total. But then when we reduced this search, when we filtered it so it could focus on purchasing relief supplies or procurement in disaster relief operations, we're left with only 77 papers. But to make it more, put the focus more on purchasing relief supplies, we actually looked for where procurement or purchasing relief supplies was the main focus of the paper, and we're left with a total of 50 papers, which we used for our final analysis. So in our descriptive analysis, which is the second bit of the guideline, we actually then looked at the number of papers that had been produced each year from 2008 to 2021, and we looked at the number of papers that had been produced or put in different journals. The next one was the category selection, which was putting the papers into different teams and dimensions. And the first dimension we used was research focus. The categories under research focus, the main categories were primary activities of procurement or purchasing relief supplies or supporting activities, which had subcategories. And the next dimension we used were the research approach, which would indicate to us the approach that has been used and those that have been neglected. The categories under that is simulation, modeling, simulation and modeling. The second one was conceptual or literature review, and the third is empirical study. The final part of our guideline is material evaluation, which we actually used to analyze this paper. We used qualitative and quantitative analysis to do the analysis. We use both analysis because they complement each other and they help us to get a structured literature review. Moving down to the results from our systematic literature review. The first result is the descriptive result. The idea behind gathering this result is to answer the first question, which is to understand the status of the research so far at the moment. From the chart, we can see that from 2008 to 2021, there has been an irregular distribution of how the papers go and come. In 2011, we see a sudden spike. The field started gaining more interest from researchers, and that is the reason for the spike. And also because in that year, there was a journal, the Journal of Humanitarian Logistics and Supply Chain Management, that is specifically for disaster relief operations. That is when the field started getting more interest from the industry, from researchers. So for this result, we can see there's increasing scholarly research in the field, although it's not as increasing as other fields. We were hoping that at the end of the day, there will be more interest and more people would try and go into the field and help us gather papers. In 2020, we can see that there was a very little amount of less than one paper that was just put in the field. And in 2021 so far, it's just one paper. The next result is the journal, the different journals and the number of papers. And like I previously said, the Journal of Humanitarian Logistics and Supply Chain Management is a journal that has been dedicated so far to disaster relief operations. And this journal so far has gathered a total of 11 papers from all the papers we gathered. This list is a list of the 10 highest ranking journals from all the papers we gathered. And we can see that from 11, the next following it is computers and industrial engineering, which is 3. Procurement is a field that you see in different, it's a field that you see in different disciplines. That is the reason why there's a diverse range of journals that are actually accepting these papers. The next result is the quantitative result. The quantitative result is more or less where we talk about our research approaches, where the methodology that have been applied. Have they applied simulation and modeling? Have they applied empirical study? Have they applied conceptual or review? The idea here is to find out the methodology that have not actually been applied and actually try and as much as possible to provide more work in that field. From our results, we can see that simulation and modeling, which is much more technical, mathematical, which involves solving different problems, is taking the highest number. Surprisingly, empirical study takes about 21 papers from the total number of papers, which shows that there's an increase from different studies because there has always been more talks about people coming in to do more empirical study. Empirical study involves field work, observations, case studies, and so just to present knowledge of real life case studies. And because the objective of disaster relief operations is very uncertain and unpredictable, we need more and more experiences from real life case studies to be able to solve the problems of the next disasters, which we also don't know when it's coming. It might be today, it might be tomorrow, it might be next year. So simulation here takes more than everyone. Empirical study should take more research. We are hoping that hopefully more research will be done empirically. The next quantitative result is with the dimension, with research focus. The first research focus, the first category under it is the primary activities, the main activities of procurement or purchasing relief supplies. The first subcategory is cost analysis, which defines the amount of money that disaster relief organizations spend, how it's spent, procurement strategies, the plans, if it's long-term or short-term, the supplier selection and contracts. We find out that suppliers, those who we actually purchase these relief supplies from, takes more literature because relief supplies is the basis, it's a guarantee for the relief organizations to actually respond to a disaster. And if we don't effectively sort out our issues with our suppliers or select the best suppliers, we tend to have issues with procuring supplies or purchasing supplies. So from every indication, cost analysis and procurement strategy are coming with the shortest amount of papers, and supplier selection is coming with the highest amount. Contracts, on the other hand, is the agreements between these relief supplies and the relief organizations. Is coming with number nine papers. We are hoping that more work will be done on cost analysis, in as much as in disaster relief operations, there's nobody, we don't look at the price we spend, we just try as much as possible to be responsive, be immediate responsive, we can save as much life as possible. I still believe that more work should be done in cost analysis. The next part of this quantitative and content analysis is secondary activity that involves the subcategories. There is the procurement organization, the procurement objective, the procurement process, and interorganizational relationship. Procurement organization takes the least amount of paper, with just 2 papers. Procurement process takes 8 papers. Procurement organization here deals with the personnel that actually work in disaster relief operations, the number of the technical know-how. So more work should be done in this aspect, because the better people, the better hands we have on deck trying to save lives, the better effective and efficient our disaster relief operations will be. Moving on.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Please try to conclude the paper within 3 minutes maximum.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next side is the qualitative results. The qualitative results is the other bit of the analysis, because we did qualitative and quantitative. The first result is cost effectiveness, depends on the type of relief supply procured. In literature, there are different claims that say how close or how local you purchase relief supplies will mean how cheap and how fast it is. But from the analysis and from our investigation, we find out that it doesn't depend on if you're sourcing it locally or internationally. It all depends on the relief supply you're actually looking out for. Market complexity and the nature of relief organization and the available funding influences the purchasing of relief supplies. The logistics, performance, governance, sustainable operations, responsiveness, partnership strategy, and other operational factors are criteria for choosing supplier partner in disaster operations. So when you want to choose supplier partners, you have to look at different criteria, different factors, how they operate, so you can choose the best. So long-term planning and commitment from relief organizations are necessary to tackle the bottlenecks. So the type of procurement strategy and how committed these relief organizations are would help us to remove the challenges and the complexities involved in this process. And to conclude from the systematic literature review, we find initially, I'm going back to the aim, which says we wanted to present the state of the art or an up-to-date study on purchasing relief supplies and disaster relief operations. From the total number of papers we gathered from the wide date time frame, we gathered only 50 papers with particular focus on purchasing relief supplies, which means that it hasn't gathered as much as we wanted it to gather. So it has actually presented a limited sample size, and we urge researchers to look more into the field of study and help us to solve more problems in this field. And looking at the research focus, most papers focus on the primary activities instead of the secondary activities. More work should be done in the secondary activities, most especially in the procurement organizations or relief organizations. And finally, more research, empirical research is needed in the field of study. Thank you very much for this presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Because of time constraint we need to look at the questions. Yeah. I have a question from John Brain. Hi, Monica. Thank you for your presentation. My question is, how can the strategy of supply chain resilience mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on supply chain performance? Just a question.
Okay, so from understanding of supply chain resistance is the ability of any supply chain to actually face challenges and bounce back immediately without having to go through reconstruction or redesign or reprocessing. So in any supply chain, if you impute resilience as a strategy when you're building it, when you're designing the supply chain, it would actually be able to improve the performance of COVID-19. I take, for example, during the initial start of the COVID-19, when at some point in various stores, like for example in the UK here, various shops where we buy the normal groceries, the day-to-day activities, the supply chain or the food supply chain in the UK was a bit disrupted because there was no inflow of food. If the supply chain was resilient, if they had prepared as much as possible for the COVID-19 or any pandemic or any disastrous event that would actually affect the supply chain would have been able to bounce back. When we go to more less developed countries where the supply chain, they don't really have much, supply chain resilience will actually help and boost the supply chain performance. So resilience would have been able to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Let me see if there's any extra question. Okay, I have questions, if you allow me. You said that this certain area in quantitative methodology that you didn't cover. What are those?
Sorry?
In your quantitative approach,
yeah,
you said that the certain area you didn't cover or not yet covered. You think that could be further investigated?
Okay, in the quantitative one. Sorry, I don't get the question.
The question is, you have different approach in your quantitative research.
Okay, yeah.
Different areas, but you say that there are certain areas that may be not covered. Yeah, this particular graph, you're right.
Okay, yeah. Okay, in this part, I said from the chart we can find out, from the papers we gathered, we find out that more work has been done in simulation and modeling. However, an empirical study has actually gathered about 21 papers. However, I said more work should be done in empirical study because of the dynamics of disasters. There's no disaster that happens that is alike. So more work should be done with real life case studies so we can gather more information we need to prepare for the next disaster that is coming, because empirical study involves going to the field, gathering primary data, either case studies, surveys, interviews. So the more experiences, the more information, the more knowledge that is transferred to us at a particular point in time that relates to disasters will be able to help us curb the challenges and the complexities in procuring or purchasing relief supplies.
If you allow me also, this is very interesting, so let's have few questions. In your research, did you cover the geographical areas and type of disasters historically that in the paper that you reviewed? The two items, geographical areas and type of disaster, like COVID-19, or it could be example storm or something like that, plus the geographic area in Asia or Africa or Europe, example, all countries.
Sorry, I don't get the question. I don't.
Yeah, in your study,
okay.
Did you specifically cover the geographical area, number one? Number two, of those kind of disaster, did you also talk about type of disasters? Because disasters, they have different type. It could be storm, it could be an earthquake, it could be anything else, yeah.
Okay, my study is actually risk analysis of emergency supply chains. Emergency supply chains is actually the chains that different stakeholders come together to build so as to curb or immediately respond to the disasters. From my study, you're asking if I cover different and a particular specific disaster, maybe hurricane, tsunamis. I'm trying to do a general ideology about tackling the disasters. I'm not focusing on a particular disaster in my study.
Okay, so it's a generic approach.
It's a generic approach.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. It was excellent discussion and presentation. I would like to thank the panel for their presentation. Dr. Vinket, thank you very much. Fatima, excellent presentation, as well as Onyeka Chukua, thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And would like to call it for today because of time constraint. So again, thank you for also our audience who had the patience to listen to this knowledge add presentation and research.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, doctor.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello. How are you?
How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm good, thank you.
Where are you from?
I'm from India.
India.
So I'm working with Modern College, Oman.
Modern College of Business and Science.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
How is the weather in Oman?
It's good now. We are just getting into summer.
Hmm.
Yes. It's
And
getting hot.
what about the situation of the COVID?
COVID is just the infection is getting rise.
Again?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
But still the government is taking all initiatives too.
I hope it will be finished soon.
Yes, at least end of this year so that people can be free.
I saw from your bio that you are a professional in law.
Yes. I'm a lawyer by profession.
And you are talking about the digital justice?
Yes, digital justice platforms, online platforms.
It's a new trend, and it's hard to analyze and to research.
Exactly, but still, in the developed countries, they have already come up with a lot of online platforms, and it was really very successful.
Mm.
So the only thing is that the government have to come up with regulations where they can regulate private online dispute resolution service providers so that the people can trust to get appropriate redressal of disputes. So I think we are waiting for the first presenter, right?
I don't know where is the rest of the other researcher.
Yeah, mine is the second one.
Your paper is the second,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you been in Egypt?
No, no.
Why not?
Maybe in the future.
Near future, inshallah.
Yes, yes, sure, sure.
You are in Oman with your family, or you are alone?
I'm with the family, yes.
You are with the family.
Yes.
I think they send me message now to start.
Okay, I can start. Maybe the other presenter can continue with me.
Yani we can start now, or
because it's already 4:15.
Dr. Ivan?
Yes.
We can start now.
Okay, sure.
First of all, I would like to thank the Arab Academy in Egypt and the Modern College of Business and Science in Oman for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to attend this valuable conference about the entrepreneurship and business. The session we are going to talk, it's about a very recent topic. It's about the e-business, e-government, and sustainability. Actually, my name is Ahmed Samir Rushdi. I'm a marketing professor and the head of consultancy, research, and development center in Sadat Academy for Management Sciences. The topic or the theme of our session about the digitalization and sustainability, the most important trend in modern life, e-business and information and communication technologies are growing at an exponential rate and playing a more and more important role in our life today. According to some statistics, there is about 5.11 billion unique mobile users, 4.39 billion unique users of internet, and 3.48 billion users of social media. Users of social media, and the trend is increasing. At the same time, we found that there is a shift from lack of information to a surplus of information, which can be observed when one has a quick look at the excess of content posted and reposted on social networks. This information overload is the case for governments and their interaction with the digital context. In our session, we are going to enjoy the presentation of two unique topics. We are going to start with the first topic, and I think Dr. Aya is here for the presentation.
Yes, sure.
The topic of the first paper, it's about the role of big data analytics for enhancing the Internet of Things applications in mega cities, the case of traffic optimization and control. This paper will be presented by Dr. Aya Mustafa Rabi Al-Garhi. Dr. Aya is a lecturer and the head of Supply Chain Department, Smart Village Campus at College of International Transport and Logistics, Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime Transport. Dr. Aya has a bachelor degree and master degree in International Transport and Logistics Management from Arab Academy. And she holds a PhD degree in International Logistics, Supply Chain and Shipping Management, University of Plymouth, the United Kingdom. We welcome you in this unique session with
My
this
pleasure.
unique topic. You know that we have only 15 minutes for the presentation.
Yes.
It's a bad luck for us, not for you. We would like to have more time, but according to the rule for the conference, we have only 15 minutes. And for the participants, it's allowed to get the questions they want to ask in the section for questions and answer section. We can start now, Dr. Aya.
Thank you for this introduction. I will just want to share the screen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My topic is about the role of big data analytics for enhancing the Internet of Things in megacities, the case study of traffic optimization and control. The first author was Islam, my colleague, Mr. Islam Hassanin. Me, the co-author, Dr. Aya Al-Garhi and Mr. Sabhi Mustafa. The presentation will start by a brief introduction, followed by a background, then the methodology used in this paper, then a discussion followed by the conclusion. This PowerPoint, okay, here for the introduction. As we know, the megacities in the developing countries are facing absolute rapid growth in the population, which is reflected in the traffic magnitude, and which also lead to a major problem regarding...
Would you like to raise your voice, please?
Okay.
The voice is not clear.
Oh, sorry. Is this better?
Yes, it's better now.
Okay, thank you. Here I will start by the introduction. As we all know, the megacities in the developing countries are facing absolute rapid growth in the population, which is reflected in the traffic magnitude, which also lead to a major problem regarding the traffic jam, accidents, and some of these issues and problems. However, the developing countries like Egypt face a critical challenge that require recommendation for fresh ideas for optimizing and control the traffic in their mega cities. The smart world is the core of vision of the Internet of Things, and also the Intelligent Transport System, the ITS, is considered one of the IoT application, which reflect the transportation system that also use information and communication technology to reduce traffic jamming problem. And as illustrated here, the transportation mean are used as a data collector tools to develop the ITS scheme. Therefore, Internet of Things is considered a useful tool that could be used to overcome the traffic congestion problem. As reviewed in front of us, ITS is one of the IoT applications that generate a huge amount of data from sensors that collect all necessary data relevant for moving vehicles. Another example relevant for the payment process is the smart card and the RFID reader to smooth and ease the flow of movement of car at the toll collection gates. The big data analytics has several benefits. It collects a huge amount of data, help varied aspects on a real-time basis. Also, it offer a prompt statistics and reporting concerning refining performance, and finally, a decision support tool. The integration between the big data analytics and the ITS, or the Intelligent Transport System. Therefore, nowadays, this integration is one of the research focus. ITS can benefit from such resolved data storage, analysis, and management problems. Big data contains many processes such as collecting, processing, managing, analyzing, and visualizing the continuously progressing data. Therefore, this paper designed a conceptual combined strategy that integrates the traffic optimization model, specifically traffic flow optimization model, TFOM, with big data tools such as big data analytics for achieving traffic controlling and optimization.
Dr. Aya, يعني can we transfer the presentation for full screen?
I tried.
يعني try to make it full screen.
This is better? Okay,
yes, yes, yes. Now it's very good. Thank you. I think this happened because of the big data.
The integration with the big data, yes. The first definition for the Internet of Things was proposed in 1999, but as we see, the ITS was developed before Internet of Things in 1970, so before the emergence of the Internet of Things, but it's now used under the umbrella of the IoT as it become one of its applications. One of its main purpose is to enhance the service provided for driver and passenger. And it could also be applied in many sectors, as we see, like logistics, public transportation, service, smart parking, traffic management and control, speed limit observation. The left side of the same figure is the integration with the big data, as we said now. As discussed earlier about the integration between ITS and big data can store a huge amount of collected data, process and analyze these data to come in a significant meaning that has the ability to settle economical obstacles, discover innovative paths, IoT storage problem regarding massive data volume that needs clouds or have several problems regarding the storage mainly, decision-making process, transmission analysis, processing the data volume of IoT and IoT efficiency. This paper suggests the big data analytics could enhance such models through its ability to collect, manage, process, analyze, and visualize continuously evolving data, and also help in a decision-making prediction. This strategy could be applied effectively in both vehicles, the traditional vehicles and as well as the smart vehicles. Therefore, keeping the traffic record by big data analytics is very, very, very useful and will help in the future prediction. Alexandria is our case study. Alexandria is considered the second capital of Egypt due to its nature, culture, importance, and the location, as it's located in the Mediterranean Sea with with the main two crowded Egyptian ports. This is a live photo of the main road in Alexandria called the Geish Road. You know it, Mr. Hassan. Here, accordingly, Alexandria is suffering from various traffic issues owing the rapid growth in the transportation demand due to various manufacturing areas, car dependency culture, increase in the car ownership use. Here we can notice that the number of vehicles in this figure has been doubled in only 9 years. This is the available data that I could collected till 2019. Couldn't take 2020, unfortunately. Due to all the previous stated reason and the frequent increase in the population, this paper recognized the absence of the traffic information available, the on-time decision, and the future prediction. Therefore, here we have the strategy formulation. Data acquisition is a primary preliminary phase, which is responsible for the gathering all unprocessed data from the central station and also validating the result. Verified data will be sent to the pre-processing unit to be able to diagnose inconsistencies in data noise, consistency, and repeated result from frequent and varied sources. In this step, periodical and non-periodical traffic congestion are detected. There are several pre-processing techniques used in the big data system, such as integration, cleansing, and redundant data elimination. The model was big, so I cut the model into two. This is the first part. When we took the pre-processing here, pre-processing unit, we have recurring data and non-recurring data. Non-recurring data, for example, for the events that happened not in a frequent basis, like accident, it's not in a frequent basis. The recurring data is like the rush hour every day that we stuck in it when we are going back from work to our homes. This is called this is what is meant by the recurring data. So if the data is periodical, then it will follow the upcoming steps. Otherwise, it will be directly to the prediction unit. For the recurring data that we called, we gave example for it, like the traffic jam or in the rush hours daily. We have here the decision-making process is fragmented into two different in-time decision-making and future decision-making. The in-time decision-making is an immediate decision that helps suggesting rerouting option for the drivers or something like this. Otherwise, the future decision is responsible for the long-term decision and strategy. Secondly, the traffic prediction helps to prevent unfortunate events like traffic congestion or other errors in the roads. Here, the big data applications, we have data application in every could be in every sectors. The application could be applied in the business sectors. Also, those applications could be helpful in science, technology, politics, e-government, security, safety, marketing, supply chain, human resources, and health. The Internet of Things, the ITS application, Intelligent Transport System application. We have navigational direction, transit routes, scheduling, information about delays due to the weather conditions, congestion, road repair work, or accident, which all considered as advanced traveler information systems that support driver with real-time data. In addition, were vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communication that enable the integration among assets in the transportation structure. We can conclude, finally, the mega cities, especially in the developing countries, due to the higher population, some problems arise like regarding the traffic. However, these problems pinpoint the shortage, struggle, and the obstacles facing the transportation network, which leads the researcher to rethink about the traffic into the smart cities. The implementation of this idea will enhance the citizens' quality of life, in addition to increase in the internet and its application, parallel with the smart cell phone, which will make it better and inexpensive opportunity to collect the information from those applications as they work as sensor, which is the base of the Internet of Things. As mentioned, ITS is considered one of the Internet of Things application, but the major problem facing this theory is the huge amount of data. That's why we make an integration between the big data and the ITS, Internet of Things. Hence, big data is booming concept growth leads to a great opportunity on all smart cities applications such as ITS. Big data is big data analytics is one of the big data tools which enhance the performance of traffic controlling and optimization by helping in improvement of collecting, analyzing, storing, and processing the huge amount of traffic data for decision-making and prediction purposes. Accordingly, possible prospective research could be addressing this, such as it needs to be applied to a real quantitative data. The importance of the big data analytics and tools became more essential and need to be on a broader scope away from ITS, which include other applications of IoT. Thank you. Here at the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Aya, for keeping the limit for the time.
Thank you.
It's really a very nice paper and very recent topic. We have only one question from one of the attendees,
Okay.
Jaylan. She's asking about what are the main devices that could be used to set up the big data analytics inside traffic units.
Okay.
Can I say it again?
No, I got it. As we know, the more we collect data, the more demanding storage requirements, such as hardware, RAM storage, to avoid predictable lag issues. So information was stored on databases located on server that running chunky data analysis program. Also, office computers network that would eventually conduct data analysis. All of this will be needed. Yani we want a support for one purpose, how to store this data. So that's why we take the integration of the big data in our paper. So it will be it's a technical. It's something will be more technical. Any other questions? Did you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now. We have two more questions.
Okay.
The first one is from Dr. Ahmed Hussein.
Okay.
And he's asking, what is the main reason behind using big data analytics rather than the cloud?
Okay.
And despite the fact that the hardware is more expensive to purchase and maintain.
Yes. Because we figure out also that the cloud eliminates the cost of purchasing and maintaining the hardware. But the crowded traffic units cannot rely alone on the cloud to store massive information. They cannot rely on it alone. That's why we go for the big data.
You have any more information, or it's okay?
This is why, because the cloud the transportation traffic unit cannot rely only on the cloud.
We have another question.
Okay.
What are the shortcomings and other resources required to synchronize information technology and transportation systems? For instance, AGV, automatically guided vehicles, cannot cross robots by themselves if the human drive managed to cross.
Look, this model, the TFOM, is designed for the smart vehicles and the traditional vehicles. So it will, no problem for the TGV. It will be for both vehicles, either traditional or smart. This is not the problem. But about the shortcoming, till now, we didn't have any disadvantage for this application. It's only the challenges of how we can do it. And we already do it in Alexandria, in BEIC, and in some places in Alexandria. Till now, it's okay. I didn't have any problem in this application. It's just a new technical way, so it takes time from us to know the know-how of it. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aya, so much.
Thank you.
for your presentation.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are moving for the, we can say, the dark side of the e-business or e-government or electronic system as a whole, which is the legal consideration or the legal form of the e-business or e-government. Now we are moving to the second topic, which is the e-commerce disputes and digital justice platform, a developmental perspective, which will be represented by Dr. Ayaban. I hope I pronounce your name in the right way.
Right.
Actually, he has obtained 2 postgraduate degrees and 2 undergraduate degrees from Pondicherry University, India. Currently, he is a coordinator for the commercial law program and a lecturer teaching commercial law at Modern College of Business and Science in Oman. He has taught previously in the international universities in Malaysia and has 18 years, touch wood, 18 years of teaching and research experience in the field of law. We are waiting for your presentation, and I hope we can keep the limit for the time for 15 minutes, and after we will start to answer the questions from the attendees. Let's start.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for your introduction. So my topic is e-commerce disputes and digital justice platforms, a developmental perspective. To say a few words about the research title, as we all know, and as we all experience, 21st century is an era of information and communication technology. And regarding the research article, this is a conceptual paper. And this research article has analyzed the recent trends in the digital justice platforms, dealing with e-commerce disputes and its effectiveness in administering justice. So these are some of the components which I'm going to take you through this presentation. A basic introduction to the topic, online dispute resolution and access to justice, dispute resolution processes, digital justice platforms, ODR developments and practices, global scenarios, technology as a party for resolving disputes, and final conclusions. Former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, Warren Burger, has observed the notion that ordinary people want black-robed judges and dress lawyers in fine panel courtrooms as setting to resolve disputes is not correct. People with problems, like people with pain, want relief, and they want it as quickly and inexpensively as possible. To give you a very brief introduction about the concept of online dispute resolution. In the last few decades, starting 1990, technological advancements and innovation in the digital age has greatly contributed to the concept of ODR being a viable option, which has seen rapid growth in both developed and developing countries. And as we all know, the world is governed by speed. The internet and technology play an important role in many of today's innovations. And handling of disputes through electronic means of communication will be the part of all legal systems in the world in the near future. Due to pandemic situation, the whole world has shifted from offline to online in majority aspects, especially the courts in terms of dispute resolution process. Almost majority courts in the world have switched on to online mode, where they can receive cases online and where it can be adjudged online. So they are in the process of developing electronic codes based on the technological advancements and tools available. So to that effect, this ODR may really benefit general public at large as far as the litigant public is concerned with respect to any claims. But my focus as far as this particular article is that online dispute resolutions can be used for online consumer transactions, especially e-commerce disputes. And we are well aware that the new technological advancements has made people's life easy. Majority of consumers across the world, they are into online purchases, online shopping with various electronic commerce business providers and service providers. To enter into a transaction is very easy nowadays. With a click, they can make a transaction and they can have their stuffs, whatever they require. When they go for a transaction with a business provider or a service provider online, they need to go for a proper contractual agreement where it can be recognized as a legal agreement. In case if anything goes wrong, they have the right to fight for their rights, consumer rights. So as we know, standard form contracts which originated from time immemorial, and it is the basis as far as online consumer transactions are concerned. The business provider will propose a list of terms and conditions which have to be accepted on the part of the other person who contracts with. So they don't have an option to choose. We call them as take it or leave it contracts. So we do have a lot of terms and conditions proposed by one person towards the other. The other person, they may have, if they really want to go for it, they have a binding nature over the terms. So in case if there is any non-compliance, of course, we know that leads to a grievance or a dissatisfaction on the part of the consumer, and that becomes a dispute between parties. And how this dispute can be resolved? Electronic commerce transactions, they lead to disputes, and at the end of the day, they may have to go for a legal procedure where they can seek appropriate remedies for seeking justice. When we look into the dispute resolution mechanisms available, these are the major dispute resolution processes existing in the global market or in the global world. As we all know, adjudicatory process, which is nothing but a court process, where the aggrieved consumer or the litigant public can go into the court of law and they can file a case and they can get their issue redressed. And is a time-consuming process and is an expensive procedure as well. And we don't really know like what may happen to the case because it requires a lot of evidences and proof which have to be substantiated. So to overcome this difficulty, we do have alternative dispute resolution mechanisms available, again, which originated centuries before and which was well incorporated nowadays into the contractual agreements, where they make it very specific in the form of a clause to say that in case of any dispute arises between parties, they can go for an appropriate redressal through a process. So ADR, as we know, there are three major forms of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms: negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. Negotiation is just between parties to go for a mutual agreement. Mediation is by way of a talk strategy where a third party, a neutral third party, can make appropriate provisions to settle the matter between the disputants. Arbitration, again, this is a proper, effective mechanism for redressal of disputes nowadays, mostly by the private entities. Rather going to the court, they prefer to go for this. Why? Because this is very similar to court process, but it is done or carried out in an informal setup. And the decision made by the arbitrator is a final decision or a binding decision on the part of the parties concerned. And we do have a lot of international conventions on that for appropriate enforcement of arbitration awards. So the concept of ODR A combination of ADR with ICT is said to be ODR. If you can have a look at this slide, traditional court processes, we know we do have various tribunals constituted by the governmental authorities to deal with cases, which is of less importance in the sense like, which is of like minor cases or civil related matters. And we do have a lot of forums like consumer forums constituted where they can easily get their disputes redressed. Traditional ADR, these are the three major mechanisms. So now as far as ODR is concerned, it can happen in two ways. One is where the court can have ODR processes in terms of their dispute redressal mechanisms, where they can have the technological tools in terms of filing cases, in terms of examining witnesses, everything can happen in the online environment. And as we know, due to pandemic situation in the last 1 year, we do have a lot of electronic courts constituted, or they do have a set of codes which can deal with certain type of cases, rather preventing or delaying in terms of justice delivery. So these are happening in various countries in terms of court-oriented ODR, online small claims court, online tribunals, and online forums. And the other aspect of ODR is ADR used using technological advancements or in the online platform. So those are negotiation, mediation, and arbitration, which can happen absolutely online. So as we discussed about the virtual courts, the objective of this is to carry out judicial proceedings without the physical presence of the litigant and the attorney in the physical court, and for the case to be judged online. An e-court is significantly different from an automated court because the entire proceedings of the court will be in strict compliance with the rule of law, with the due process and procedures. The only thing is that they need to have a proper technical infrastructure where they can make use of the technological tools and advancements to have the whole thing happening online. And there are very famous digital justice platforms which do really work effectively. And these are some of the good examples of effective digital platforms across the world in various countries like Modria, CyberSettle, Virtual Magistrate Project, SmartSettle, and we do have various other platforms as well. And all these are private ODR services provided by various companies based on their establishment, where they want to deal with those electronic commerce disputes, especially since electronic commerce transactions are happening in the online environment. So the idea is they can still deal with those type of disputes which may originate through that in the online environment. So all these digital justice platforms were designed in such a way where ample opportunity can be given to both the parties concerned in the online environment. The design is to resolve the dispute. It can be either amicably by way of a private settlement between parties concerned, or it can be done through arbitration as well. So, but in all of these, there is no sort of arbitration. It is just either by way of a negotiation or a mediation process. In terms of international developments with respect to ODR, UNCITRAL, United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, have come up with a particular model where they can deal with cases by resolving the same using the ODR platform. So these are some of the stages prescribed, and a good number of countries have already adopted these into their process to resolve the disputes which may originate in the online environment. So here they say the first stage is like where the disputant can file a complaint, and the copy of the complaint can be sent to the defendant concerned, the company or the service provider, and they will be in a position to look into whether it can happen, whether it can be resolved by way of a negotiation. So these are done purely automated, a technology enabled negotiation. And if it doesn't work, then it goes to the next stage where they will have a facilitated settlement in the form of mediation. And if it doesn't work, then it goes for the next stage where ODR proceedings may commence. And they will be in a position to look into how this can be resolved, and they can even propose. But arbitration has not been brought into this. The reason is that In some of the electronic commerce transactions, they do include clauses to say that in case of any dispute arises, how this can be resolved. So include a clause to say that it can be resolved by way of an arbitration. Then it is considered as a private form of resolving the dispute. Some of the well-known platforms in the developed countries are these: European Union regulation on ODR platform. So this really plays a very important role protecting online consumers, where they have united various internet service providers into one single platform, and is an interactive website where the disputant can really speak with the company concerned, and they can try their level best to come up with an arrangement to resolve the matter. So this is a way how the government have come up with regulations initiating, or where they connect the service providers or the business providers with the online consumers, and they can go for an automated settlement process. And it is really effective and it works well. International Council for Online Dispute Resolution. This is a non-profit consortium established in the year 2017. The main purpose is to formulate international standards for online dispute resolution. The prime objective is to support in adopting open standards across borders using ICT to promote and conduct the ODR, where the systems can be easily accessible with high confidentiality and equal treatment of parties with a fair and impartial procedure. So they have come up with appropriate provisions or in the form of regulations where private ODR service providers can employ those to resolve matters which may be brought to them by the private disputants. Looking into the court setups in the developed countries, they have come up with various electronic courts, where the main objective of the electronic courts or the virtual courts is to deal with small claims. Rather going for a complicated, time-consuming procedure, they can deal with those type of issues easily, and the matter can be easily resolved online. So in UK, an online court for claims up to £25,000 was recommended by the Civil Court Structure Review. This is one of the most important major hierarchical change to the civil court system, which enable small value claims can be brought into the courts and it can be resolved online. So this is to improve access to justice for litigant public and small business operations, rather going through a complicated, time-consuming process or procedure. In China, recently, they came up with provisions with respect to how trial of cases can happen in the online environment, and they have already constituted internet courts in some of the provinces in China. And it deals with various types of cases, especially online sale of goods are covered under this. In Australia, this is also a recent introduction in the state of Victoria, Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. And this is for the purpose of having an online dispute resolution procedure. So where again, they bring in the negotiation and the mediation process into it to see that the disputes, whatever brought by the litigant public or consumers, can be redressed easily. And from all this, we can see that technology as a party to the dispute plays a very important role in assisting the dispute resolution process. Mainly negotiation and mediation, these are happening without human intervention, where it can be absolutely automated. In a good number of countries, in majority countries in the world, I will say that they have already brought into in terms of dealing with consumer disputes. But we don't have a proper framework, a legal framework which can govern these, and we don't have any sort of like governmental regulations strictly to comply with, where that can create trust in the minds of consumers to resolve their disputes absolutely online. So to conclude, the ODR field has grown tremendously in terms of its scope, dealing with a variety of matters, and the technological advancements has proved that ODR systems can effectively be used or designed to render justice or address the claims. Majority of ODR systems in practice is operating in a private setting. Due to the current pandemic situation, it is well evident that majority of countries in the world have switched over to online mode, as I've said previously. For the wider adoption of ODR systems, there were several issues like reliability, due process, procedural fairness, legitimacy, standard procedures to be addressed systematically. So this is one reason where we need to come up with, where the governmental authorities or the regulators need to come up with appropriate regulations in place where they can control the e-commerce business providers or service providers in terms of compliance. Recommendations. So as of now, we don't really have an enforceable framework relating to ODR governance, and there exists no strict compliance procedures formulated either through national or international regulations. There needs to be a trusted platform exclusively for ODR mechanisms to be dealt with, which will ensure legal aspects and compliance procedures. So basically they can introduce this, even though we do have now, they can have a proper, clear framework in place, appropriate regulations in place on the part of the e-commerce business providers or service providers, and that can be exclusively for e-commerce cases, and where we can easily rule out the issue of jurisdiction in terms of cross-border transactions. And in the near future, it can be introduced for various other disputes as well, as far as civil matters are concerned. And it has various challenges, but there needs to be codified laws which can make the ODR successful, as this online ADR is going to be the future. And these are my references. And if you may have any questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iban, for your presentation and keeping the time limit. Actually, your topic is very hard, and I have only one question for myself.
Please, sir.
Is there any country applying the virtual court 100%?
It's not 100% because virtual courts, especially electronic courts, as far as civil matters, we do have. European Union has come up with a framework, and they have united all the European countries, especially the private service providers, where they need to be a party of that, be a part of it. And majority of the disputes, whatever they are bringing into the online platform, has been redressed. 70 to 80% are redressed at the first stage itself by way of negotiation. But virtual courts, if we say, for criminal cases, they do deal with, but it is not 100%. Initial filing or summons related issues or warrant issues, some of them are dealt with by the developed countries, but not absolutely the whole process.
Okay, thank you so much.
Some of the sensitive matters, it is highly impossible to bring in the virtual courts platforms absolutely.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Dr. Iban.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Aya. And thank you for the committee for the conference. And hope we meet again soon in more conferences to discuss more recent topics for the benefits for the researchers and for the countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.